Hello, and thanks for watching our next episode of In the Spotlight with Kingsley Gate Partners. I'm Shannon Libbard, a leader in our healthcare practice, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by the Senior Vice President of Workforce Operations for Atrium Health, Sebastien, goes by Seb Girard. Hi, Seb, and welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Shannon. I'm so happy to be here. Honored to be invited. And yes, I go by Seb. Sebastien is when I'm in trouble, so let's keep it to Seb.
Seb. Quick introduction on Seb. Seb is a son, a husband, and a proud dad of 3 kids. He has what he describes as the best of both worlds, in that if you heard his accent, you may be wondering. He's originally from Canada, from Montreal, and has been in the United States. He's also American, been in the United States about 11 years, has lived in DC, Boston, Dallas, and now his home is in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll hear a little more about that. Seb shares that he is first and foremost a futurist and considers himself a business and social engineer on top of being an HR executive. HR is a second career for Seb. He had many years in operations leadership prior to making the transition to HR and to healthcare, and specifically not-for-profit healthcare. Seb's been with Atrium Health for about 2.5 years. They have, in the numbers, Seb, you'll correct me on the numbers, keep changing, right? As Atrium continues to grow, about 80,000 teammates, 42 plus hospitals, 1,500 plus care locations throughout the Southeast, and they keep growing. Seb has an MBA from MIT. I've personally known Seb for several years, and our audience is in for a real treat. So again, Seb, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're going to dive right in if you're ready.
I am very ready.
Okay, good. So tell us, Seb, about the early days in 2020 when you decided to take something like, a good portion of those 80,000 plus employees virtual. Tell us what that was like.
Yes, and it's so funny because we're celebrating the 1-year anniversary, right? And knowing what we know today, things would have maybe done differently in the past year. But if we go back in time where COVID hit us, and it was scary, it was unknown, fear was a factor. And I want to just start by saying a huge thank you to our IT team, because safety of our teammate was the number one thing we had in mind. And to remove teammates that were not patient-facing or clinical, that had to be in person, to remove them from our location, to keep them safe at home was crucial. And IT did it in less than 4 days. And we're talking thousands of teammates here. And they did it in less than 4 days. And not only did they did it in less than 4 days, but we even surveyed a couple months later to see how people were satisfied with how IT moved them to work remotely. And they got in the low 90% of satisfaction. So they did it swiftly, they did it correctly, they provided the tools. So I cannot talk about our journey to go virtual without giving them tons of credit. It was pretty awesome. So again, did it in 4 days, sent everybody at home. Safety was, we had the most top of mind. But then we started to ask ourselves the question, because like Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. And in this case, we're forced to work remotely. And the question we started to ask ourselves is, how do we want this to look like once the pandemic is going to be over? And what are some of the lessons learned? And one of the things we thinking about our long-term strategy, we had 5 pillars. So we really assessed the situation with 5 pillars. The pillars were costs, productivity, real estate, technology, and people. And for us, and all of them have their own importance. And for us, making sure that each of those pillars made sense, this is how we started to assess how would be our situation post-COVID. So then, again, going into the journey, so we're looking to the long-term strategy. We did a lot of survey with our teammates because we wanted to make sure that they were adapting to the situation, that they were connecting with their leaders, that their productivity was as good as before, if not better, and that their engagement was also very, very strong. We're in the last stages of making decisions for our long-term strategy, so we're not totally there yet, but very soon we should have some news. But one thing we did find out that we thought was very interesting in some of the studies, out of all the 1,000 of teammates that are working from home, the average commute is 19 miles and 36 minutes one way. So, so just there, if we were to make the decision to keep going the way we're going right now, even without COVID, we're talking an hour, 15 minutes of time saved, not being in the car, and almost 40 miles. So there's huge time saving and cost saving for our teammates. There's benefits also. Yep.
Yeah, and not to mention the environmental benefits too, right?
That's exactly that.
Not people in
Which
their
is big.
cars, and yeah.
Exactly.
So along the way, Seb, that's great. Along the way, what lessons did you learn? So tell me, it was a huge undertaking and understand all the implications and the pillars. What would you do differently, or maybe some lessons that you learned along the way?
Well, the lessons learned, and I'm not sure we would have done much differently, because I really think it went extremely well. Well, first of all, working remotely worked. That's
Yeah.
the first lesson learned. And I know it sounds basic, because in many industry, people have been working virtually for years now. In healthcare, this is pretty innovative, right? And healthcare was very averse to have to work remotely. So first of all, it works. Second of all, people want it, right? So humans are resilient. So at first it was demanding, but then people get used to it. And when you get used to it, you want it. You want to keep it.
Right.
The other thing that we're learning is it's the way we need to do leadership development need to evolve on how to develop leaders to be virtual leaders. Because what make a good leader in person and a good leader virtually is extremely different. And just for example, and I'll stay very simple, but having a crucial conversation virtually, having a performance-based conversation virtually, or performance appraisal virtually, right? Or let's talk about burnout and exhaustion. How do I pick up on exhaustion when I don't have the body language, right? How do I retrain the leaders that are feelers, right? That use body language, but now lose all of that virtually. How do you retrain them so they can be as efficient? So that really changed the way to do leadership development. So that's another big lesson learned. The market is really shifting, especially in healthcare, from we were monitoring productivity to be monitoring performance-based outcomes. So it's becoming less and less important when people work or how much hour they work. What matters is the results, right? Where when you're in the office, everybody pay attention if you're there from 8 to 5. And if you take a longer lunch, or if you need to go to your doctor appointments, then there's a water cooler conversation. Where right now, we're at home, right? So we work from home and we sleep at work. It's both. But in the end, the only thing people assess is results. So that's another big one. And lastly, I think we're finding out that flexibility is going to be the name of the game in the future. Like, we truly need that. Our organization is going to be able to offer flexibility, going to have a competitive advantage. And we see it. I'll give an example from all the parents that had their kids doing virtual school, which is very challenging. They needed their employer to be extremely flexible to their situation and be understanding, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to go away, COVID or not. So that mindset of flexibility is going to stick around.
Yeah, and I know you had your two youngest at home with you, so you were full-time employee as well as school teacher and everything else. Thankfully,
that's exactly that.
Beautiful wife to help out with that. But
she has all the credit for that. I'm very grateful for her. Yep.
Right. So talk about the outlook for 2021 and beyond, because I can't believe it's already March, but 2021 and beyond for Atrium. I know you're finalizing plans and nothing's official yet, but what are your thoughts around the outlook in the near and longer term?
Well, a couple of things, and I want to start by saying, so if we were to learn a lesson from previous crisis, mainly economic crisis, right? Because pandemic is from the last one from 1919, so cannot use the same mindset. In an economic crisis, turnover always go down, right? So the reason is unemployment rate go up. Because unemployment rate go up, there's less opportunity out there for teammates, so turnover go down. And when turnover go down, very often engagement go up, because people has a tendency to not complain as much if they don't have the luxury to leave, right? And we've seen that now, and we've seen it during COVID. So our turnover went down by about 4 or 5%, et cetera. Now, what we do see, and that's where a lot of organizations need to pay attention, is when the recovery is happening, turnover go back up to where it was, and then some, right? Because everybody that wanted to leave during the crisis, that didn't have the option, now that they do, so you have your normal turnover, and then you have everybody that was thinking about leaving. So basically, you have to pay attention to the signal. So the signal is turnover go down, engagement go up. So you're going to think, hey, everything go well. That is not true. It's very temporary. So your turnover going to go back to where it was and then some. This is in normal times, so in normal crisis recovery time. Our prediction with COVID is turnover going to go back to where it was and then some, and then some. The reason why here is we think we're going to have buckets of turnover that didn't exist in other crises. So I'll give an example. We think burnout, exhaustion, going to be a reason of turnover. We think that especially in healthcare, going to have wave of retirement because it has been a very demanding year, and the 401ks didn't went down as much as we thought it would. So retirement is still good. So we think we're going to have wave of retirement. We also think that people are going to want to change industry, right? So in healthcare, for example, it has been extremely demanding. We were in the eye of the hurricanes for a year. So many people just going to say, you know what, I don't want to stay in healthcare. It's just not for me. And lastly, we also think that we're going to have amazing teammates, extremely engaged, that love company. And that's not just us. We think it's everywhere. That just going to need to have a change of pace, a change of scenery, right? I love my employer, but I've been through hell in the past year, and I need to go somewhere else. And this is in addition to everybody that feels that maybe they were underappreciated. So not at Atrium, like we truly care, but if we look into everybody, any company out there, there's people that did feel unappreciated, and that's going to be another wave of turnover. So that would be probably the biggest trend for 2021 we're paying attention. The second one is assuming work remotely is there to stay. It's going to create the phenomenon where you can start hiring people, but because it's work remote, then you can hire them from anywhere in the nation and not move them. And we're seeing that. I was talking, and I'm not going to say the company, but we're talking with a large organization in Charlotte, and they were saying to me that basically Silicon Valley were calling their IT people, and they were offering a bit less than Silicon Valley salary, but a bit less than Silicon Valley salary is way more than what we have in Charlotte. And they were saying, yeah, exactly. And they were saying, but please stay in Charlotte. So now the income of those people increase dramatically. They don't even have to move, but it's turnover. So the reason why I'm saying that, and we think it's going to be the same for executives, that it's going to be a huge trend to just hire executive and not move them. And then the trend we think it's going to create it's going to be a competitive disadvantage if your organization doesn't do that. So if you do it, you're just going to level the field. But if you don't, everybody doing it going to have a huge advantage toward you. So it's something to really pay attention to. The other thing in terms of 2021 is we want to learn from what 2020 brought to us and really push it even more. And I think what 2020 put forward is a true need of corporate social responsibility. There's a strong need for that, to be involved in the communities and make communities better. That well-being and mental health is the name of the game, and it's here to stay. That social justice or social injustice is something that all together we can move the needle, but we need to be intentional and keep working extremely hard at it and keep having courageous conversation every single day. Social injustice is not an event or a couple event that happened in 2020. It's a cause that we need to address as fast as we can. And again, flexibility is going to be necessary in the future.
Yeah, for sure. The name of the game, for sure. And we're seeing it too in some of our searches that we're conducting. You know, the ones that don't require relocation are a lot easier than the ones that say we need some. In some roles, they do need somebody on the ground, right? For your organization, it'd be hard to probably be a clinical executive working remotely full time.
That's
right?
exactly that. Yes.
You got to be on site and doing certain things. So, the trends that you're paying attention to, because I know you're a futurist and I know you're always like into the latest and you're so well versed in that. What trends are you paying attention to with regard to the workforce in general, but particularly executive leadership? And you talked a little bit about it in your prior answer, but what are you paying attention to in regards to employment trends and the like?
So I'll talk about a couple trends that were true before the pandemic that I think the pandemic really effaces. And I think paying attention to those trends in the future, but also how it was addressed in your organization before, and how you intend to tackle it. So the first one I want to talk about, it's the experience economy, and truly how we move from engagement to experience. So the experience economy, and I'm just going to look my notes for the names. So it's a concept that came out in the late 90s. It was a book. It was an HR business review that came out in the late 90s that really caught fire in the past 10 years, and even more lately, to the point where Harvard Business Review are updating their articles on the experience economy. And the book is called The Experience Economy, and it's wrote by B. Joseph Pine-Sagan and James H. Gilmore. And the concept is that if we look into business, and then we'll translate it into what it means for employee engagement, the concept is, for business, it's the fight for customer attention. And the more people pay attention to you instead of somebody else, the more you're going to win. And the way to win that attention is through creating experience, right? And Maya Angelou said it the best: people forget what you tell them, they never forget how you make them feel. So with that in mind, if we think about companies that create an amazing experience, you're going to see that those are the best company out there. Disney, as an example, Amazon, Apple, and we can keep going with. So every time you see those companies winning is because they dominate the experience economy. Now, if I translate it into employee engagement, there's a difference between engagement and experience. I can be extremely engaged and have an awful experience. But what makes people stay is the experience, because the experience is what create emotions. And what create emotion is what you're going to always remember. Again, coming back to what Maya Angelou said. So that movement from engagement to experience is extremely important. And I will say in healthcare even more, because creating experience in the past year had been demanding because the pandemic was playing against us. So again, engaged people might have had awful experience if they didn't have the resources, if they were short-staffed, or just a series of bad patient or bad cases in a row. So to change your mind and assess experience, and creating experience is a huge trend to pay attention. Now, if we link it to the executive, and if we link it to the outlook of 2021 that we were talking a bit earlier on, where we need to expect high turnover, that engagement is not what make people stay, it's experience. And 2020 is the tough year to create experience. It was a very tough year to do so. I think we can expect a very high turnover in executive. And I think it's going to be a mix of people burned out, exhaustion. Again, change of scenery. I think we're going to have a lot of people that felt underappreciated. I think a lot of executive work many hours, countless hours in weekend. And depending if your senior leadership paid attention to it or not, you might feel underappreciated, and then that makes you look for another job. Many organizations had to do cost saving initiatives. So if an exec had no bonus or had to cut 25% of their salary, even if they're engaged, their experience was not good, because I can love my company, I can be engaged, but the experience of losing 25% of my pay is what's going to be long lasting, and that's going to make me. So we expect in the market, not necessarily Atrium, but in the market, a very high turnover in executive leadership. And again, just to link it back, the no need to move will become a competitive advantage, right? So that's going to be a big one. Yep.
Right. Well, and you mentioned too the originally, I think we thought, and you and I may have had this conversation 6-9 months ago, about people waiting potentially to retire because not sure what the market's going to do and not sure what 401ks are going to do. And so people who we thought may be close to retirement, it's really hard to predict with forward-looking models and things like that. So we know that the leadership workforce is aging, right? But we thought, well, maybe they're going to stick around for a few more years because they're going to need to financially. Not so much the case based on, fingers crossed, today and how the financial outlook is. And so that wave of retirements that we were anticipating, we may still be anticipating versus, thinking maybe, oh gosh, people are going to, because of the financial implications of COVID, people are going to wait to retire. But we're starting, I'm seeing news every day of people retiring. It's starting to happen now. It's just interesting, the trends, and I know you track those.
Oh yeah, and again, I think you're spot on. I think the 401ks are doing good, and I think people worked so hard in the past year that if you're just 1 year or two from retirement, do it now. and that's what we're seeing. So
Right.
it's, yeah, absolutely. So that is going to create a gap.
Well, unfortunately, I'm closer to, well, fortunately, I don't know. Retirement's still a ways off for me.
That's fortunately, it's a good
You're
thing.
younger than me. You're younger than me. So, but,
I don't know about that.
so Seb, closing comments, anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you? We've got plenty of time, want to hear your thoughts. So the floor is yours, my friend.
There's a couple of things, maybe just as closing comment. I think assessing how the last year really went, I think it's reinforcing the need for HR to drive the people strategy and be at the table, at the executive table. And I think the need to have HR professional with an extremely strong business acumen is even stronger. There's a saying that we have in our organization. It's the real work is happening in the white space. And by that, what we mean, and it's a saying from our CEO, Gene Woods, if you look into an org chart, you see the boxes. The boxes is your job description, but the added value of the work is all the work that is done outside of the boxes, which is the white space. And very often, nobody owns the white space, so people need to come together to hone it together and make it happen. So it requires a different type of leaders that think differently. That's a different type of HR, and I think the last year got it enhanced. So really strong driving the people strategy and strong business acumen. Again, I want to go back to the experience economy. Engagement is moving to experience, and it's a big difference between both. And if any organization are measuring engagement but not experience, and not experience at the point in time that matter the most for their teammates or their leader, they will very soon be behind the eight ball and in a competitive disadvantage compared to organizations that are measuring experience. So that's another one. And then there's a couple trends in general to pay attention to. And I would say the market is extremely tight. We're talking about retirement. So the statistic is for 2 boomers leaving, there's 1 Gen Y and 1 Gen Z entering the employment market. 2 leaving, 1 coming. So just there, we're going to see a problem, right? The second thing is the Gen Z is going to be known as the entrepreneur generation, which means right now, statistically, 41% of them want to create their own company. So they don't even going to want to be on your payroll. So we're losing 2 people to retirement, only 1 coming in the employment market, but almost half of the people coming in the employment market doesn't even want to be on your payroll. So that's going to create another set of headaches. Now let's link it to prior to the economic crisis, we were in full employment. So in the US, when you're below 4% unemployment rate, you're considered for unemployment. We're in the low 6% right now, but we'll go back, right? We're in the low 6 because of the pandemic. So virtually everybody has a job. 2 are leaving, 1's coming, and half of the people coming doesn't even want to be on your payroll. So the other thing I would say, the technology to have the passive job seeker market be at 100% already exists. And right now it's around 85%. So 85% of the people are passive job seekers, but technology is going to make this 100%. So which means that basically every single person in the organization that has a cell phone gonna have access to a job without even looking, and it's gonna be in a heartbeat, right? So when we put all those things together, retention is the only way to win. Talent acquisition and executive recruiting step out at the plate to, almost to stride from the get-go. And it's going to be so hard to attract the best talent, executives or teammates, that your only chance to win is retention. And then I'm linking it back to the experience economy. Your only way to retain is to create experience. So that would be my closing comments.
Yeah, interesting. I want the conversation to keep going. So you did a nice closing comments, but I want to pick up on one thing you said about creating, the retention aspects of things and creating a great culture. I know you've been involved in over the years a number of different initiatives. Talk a little bit about the culture of Atrium Health and why you were attracted to Atrium, and talk a little bit. This is now your chance to brag on Atrium a little bit.
What really attracted me to Atrium in the first place, there was 2 words in the mission statement that really connected to me. And our mission statement, I want to have it right, is improve health, elevate hope, advance healing for all. And those were the two words that mattered the most to me. So you said it at the beginning, I talk funny, I have an accent. I'm from Canada, and to make it, nobody's perfect, right? So, and to make it worse, I'm from Montreal. So French is my first language. But in Canada, healthcare is universal healthcare, which means that, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect system in Canada because it takes forever before you get care, but there's absolutely no discrimination on who get care. If you need care, you have access to care. And coming to the US, there was a bit of my culture shock with some of the healthcare system where there's selection on who they can see or who they cannot, which is why I was very attracted to non-for-profit healthcare. And where Atrium really connected for me is that for all those two words, because to me, that no matter how you look or self-identify, the color of your skin, your gender, your belief, your sexual orientation, you should have access to care. Or no matter that you are Terry Bridgewater from the Panthers, or somebody may be going in a tough patch, you need to have access to care, you need to have access to the same quality of care. And that was highly attractive to me to come for Atrium. And it took me a couple days to realize that those are not just words on a piece of paper to look good. This is at the core of who we are. And making sure that we have the health of our communities in mind in every action that we're doing, and making sure that whoever you are, self-identified, color of your skin, gender, sexual orientation, or belief, you will have access to care. So I came for those two words, but I'm staying for the culture. You know, and again, if I can brag about Atrium is to be able to have that mindset and share the love by growing the way we're growing, and outreaching to other systems that we are combining with that have the same mindset, so we can share best practices and bring what is best to their, you know, which is our patient, but at that, you know, their patient and their communities. It's extremely engaging.
So now Atrium Health is in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, continuing to grow. I know there are plans through your strategic combination with Wake Forest Baptist to build a medical school in downtown Charlotte. Is that right?
Yes, that would be accurate. Now the specific location, I don't have it yet, but we're in the final. Yes, we're in the final stages to get everything going. So, but it's absolutely a plan. It will happen. Yep.
And you are the second largest employer in the state of North Carolina. Is that correct?
Yeah, the largest in Charlotte, second largest in North Carolina, just behind Walmart.
Wow.
So it's a very we're anchored in North Carolina, and just love our communities, and
Very good. Very good. Well, Seb, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us today. I know our listeners will get quite a bit out of it. Please agree to come back and visit with me at some future date on some other topic that is of interest to our listeners, and just appreciate you and your time. I know it's very precious, and we just thank you.
No, thanks to you. And I would not be in HR without inviting people to connect with me too, right? So, you know, please find me on LinkedIn. My name is written not the Spanish way with an A at the end. It's the French way with an E at the end. But again, I you know, we've been working together for years. Thoroughly appreciate our partnership, and just even been honored to be invited today and have a conversation with you.
Great. Have a good day. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.